Welcome to the Green Building Show, where we investigate green design and building trends throughout Australia.
This week, we continue our investigation into cost. I'll be speaking with Maddalena Vienna, Principal of Vienna Design Studio in Sydney, who's going to give us a breakdown of what it actually costs to renovate the interior of a home, and she's going to explain the biggest causes for budget blowout. And later, I'll be speaking with architect Trevor Reitsma, who's designed an extraordinary home on the Sunshine Coast, which took out this year's Queensland Building Awards. I'm here today with Maddalena Vienna. She's the Principal of Vienna Design in Sydney. Thank you for being with us, Maddalena.
Pleasure, thank you.
So we're talking today about the cost of a renovation in an internal space, generally on the ground level. I guess what kind of cost per square metre are we looking at for a renovation like this?
Well, it's very hard to give a precise price for that because, of course, it depends on many factors. One of those, for example, is where the house is located, how big the space is, and the changes that the client would like to have. For example, access become a very important element, and builders sometimes charge much more money to handle all the materials and from, let's say, from the front entry to the back, because there is no back access. So you may look almost doubling the price of your renovation if you have a very difficult access. Of course, also there are changes that you may want to do to open up the space, and therefore those are structural changes, which means you need to check if there are structural walls. If there's structural wall, you may need an engineer involved in the process, and they may cost, of course, for new beams to be installed, but definitely it does change the look of the design.
Right. Okay.
Overall.
Are you able to give us a price range of? I know obviously there's so many different variations.
Yes.
Is there and also different parts of the country can also have different variations. But is there a price range you can give us?
So there is, and I just noticed, through experience and tendering so many projects, that it does vary also accordingly to where the house is located. In certain areas, which is, which are more prestigious, it's always more expensive to do a renovation, and people tend to ask a little bit more money. So the price vary. As I said, for easy access and a simple project, you may get away with $2,000 per square meter. But in certain areas where the access is very difficult.
Trevor, thank you so much for your time.
No drama, thank you.
And you also want a quality of finishes, which is a little bit better. Then you can go up to $8,000. So there is a huge range between one and the other.
Okay, great. And where is the money mostly spent? Is it on the labour? Is it on the wet trades? Or is it on the design? Or is it on the materials?
Well, I have to say that people tend to want to spend the money in the finishes. So they're very happy to use a recycled timber flooring that costs $200 per square meter, rather than using cypress or pine or something that it may cost $50 per square meter. So the desire is always to apply or to use beautiful finishes, because it gives the idea or the illusion to be beautiful and of course more expensive. However, I think the people are changing a little bit, and they realize that sometimes it's not really the finish that makes the space. It's sometimes the volume. It can be, for example, the use of rake ceiling, bigger window, and open plan that really gives this wow effect and makes the space much more functional. It's not just the use of beautiful travertino tile.
Great. Okay. And I guess what is one part of a renovation that can potentially add the most value for the less amount of capital? So would it be you mentioned off camera, we were talking about the truss ceilings or the rake ceilings? Is that something that...
I think something that's very, very important is to bring light into the space, because no matter how nice you make the space, if it is really dark and the ceiling are very low, it just doesn't give this quality to the space. So I think it's very, very important to assess the orientation of the house and try to take advantage. So that money is very well spent, because still people wanted to go to a space and just feeling good about it, and the sense of well-being many times is really given by the proportion of the space and by the height and by the light that you have in there, and then the rest finish it off with the overall thing. And placement also, I think people need a lot of help sometimes. It's not so much how big your living space is, but how well organized it is. So we actually start designing a lot of bookcases, like the one you can see here, lots of joinery, because people don't want to buy furniture anymore apart from a sofa. They actually, or a table. They actually like that is much more organized, and so you got lots of storage and lots of place to put things. And therefore the space also looks bigger. So there is this tendency now to actually invest a lot in joinery. They are becoming part of the environment and the space there. And they disappear, so you're almost concealed, hidden.
Okay, yes. So and how much does it cost to get some joinery throughout the living space? I
think when you do, for example, a kitchen, the joinery will, we as architect and designer, we actually design all this, so therefore it becomes part of the package. So you will find that it's not that expensive, and especially if you are humble a little bit with the finishes, rather than having, for example, a bookcase that is a polyurethane finish. If it is, for example, hand painted, like the walls, then the cost is 1/3. Yeah, so there are ways, because believe me, even everybody wants to have value for the money. So, and when they see the difference, costing, they are happy to have a painter maybe finish it off rather than having everything super slick. There is a budget for every project. And also the long term, you wanted to stay in this place. All this factor plays a very important part, in the decision how much money you want to spend.
Sure. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier we were talking about access and things like that.
Yes.
So obviously when it comes to dealing with your wet trades and the people on the job, you don't have much, there's not much choice in how much you're going to spend, because it's going to cost how much it's going to cost. But when it comes, I guess, what gives you the most influence over the end cost of your renovation? Is it what finishes you choose? Is it what design you choose?
Definitely the design. I mean, the finishing can always be upgraded. When things are in the wrong position, that's when it costs a lot of money to change. Especially if you start having a slab of flooring and polished concrete, everything you would do in the future, you can't do it. You can't conceal anything. So the first thing is really having the right placement of things and the right circulation. So you move freely, and all your furniture and everything can be placed in the right location, and it doesn't interfere. For example, a lot of people originally, they just said, I want a big space, and after they could see, they actually the space didn't work. So it's very, very important to spend a little bit extra time in designing the space properly.
Okay, so spend time on design. Okay, and one last question. I guess what's one piece of advice you could give to a homeowner if they're thinking about renovating their own space, their own living space? What advice could you give them to keep that project within budget?
Well, to me is, first of all, have a master plan, so knowing exactly what you want to do in the long term. Think about and make a checklist, everything you have that you wanted to incorporate in this space. And when you got that right, don't think that just all made appliances or super finishes are really giving the quality of your space. So try to go to auction in places where you can understand the value of what you get in there, but don't compromise the design as the overall plan, So that's very important.
Great. Maddalena Vienna, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here.
I'm here today with Trevor Reitsma. He's the director of Reitsma and Associates on the Sunshine Coast. Thanks for being with us, Trevor.
Yeah, not a problem.
So we're talking today about the Keneally residence, which is a lightweight alteration which actually took out the Queensland Building Awards this year. I guess, would you want to just tell us a little bit about the project, Trevor? What was the brief from the client, and how did you respond in the design?
Sure. The original house was a 1980s house. It was a client that had for quite a few years, and they wanted to use it on a more frequent arrangement as a weekend getaway. And they had a great location, and unfortunately the existing house never really kind of capitalised on the view or the location in the way that a new house could. And there was also a sense of wanting to utilise part of the existing structure.
Fantastic. All right. And what were the main problems with the project? I mean, you mentioned that it was the views were one aspect that really needed significant improving. Can you tell us how you went about improving that, and any other challenges that arose?
When we first arrived on site, we thought that there could be some good views, so we actually hopped up onto the original house's handrail and stood on the top of it. And anybody who's kind of familiar with the Dickey Beach region there, you get a lovely view up to Queen Colonies, which is kind of like some cliff faces, and then see the waves breaking. So as soon as we stood on that handrail, we knew that we needed to make the new first level floor as high as possible. And so effectively what we decided at that point was that we would lift the original floor an amazing 2 metres higher, and we also had to keep in mind that we weren't to exceed the 8.5 metre height limit that's council imposed. Right.
Okay. Great. I mean, I'm looking at a picture of the original home here, and you've done it's been a complete transformation. I guess how did materials play into the new redesign? Why did you decide to go with lightweight construction or lightweight materials?
Sure. I think with us it was a case that we wanted to add a little bit of interest. We wanted to also be sympathetic to the fact that this was a holiday house, and that we wanted to kind of have a bit of a throwback to some of the more traditional kind of architecture, which whilst the overall kind of look of the house is kind of heavy and box-like, we felt that by using the lightweight structure, cladding, that we were able to kind of soften what would have otherwise have just been a big rendered box.
Sure.
And so that's where the dark elements of the external part of the house, we used a 6mm Hardy Flex cladding with random battens, and we also introduced the Scion matrix system for the handrail and the soffits, which kind of form a fairly dramatic portion of the street view of the house.
All right, fantastic. Trevor, thank you so much for your time.
No drama, thank you.